The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Friday, May 11th, Saturday, May 12th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North in the Cariboo region, on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We're 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network. You can also check us out on periscope.tv every Monday through Friday night, our YouTube channel where we store our archives. Do me a favor, when you go over there, hit the subscribe button, youtube.com/spacedoutradio, our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. We are just getting over a big hacking incident yesterday, so a lot of it has to be put back together. But we do have our store, our Encounter Online news section. You can watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Hey, we made it to the weekend, everybody. We made it. Another week wraps up. I hope you're having a nice, cool drink tonight, or maybe something warm if you need it. And just sitting back and relaxing with us, because today is a good day. We made it to the weekend. And we're going to get into some UFOs tonight. It's been a power week for us, and we're going to end it strong tonight with tonight's guest. With Canada being the closest ally of the United States and sharing the world's longest unprotected border, with the closeness between our two countries, you do have to wonder, politically or on a defense measure, where the two countries lie on the subject of UFOs. Does Canada, with their small military and defense budget, even play any sort of a distinct role? Tonight, researcher and blogger MJ Banias is here with us. MJ has critically and philosophically examined the weird, strange, and anomalous. He's based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, so you know he's wearing something Winnipeg Jets right now, probably a white t-shirt. He was a former field investigator with MUFON, contributes to Mysterious Universe and Rogue Planet. His work has been included in Fate magazine, and he's got a book out called UFOs, Reframing the Debate. We were one of MJ's first interviews that he ever did in this field on a big level. MJ, glad to have you back, my friend. I've been following your work. Buddy, I got to tell you, the way your work has exploded around the scene in the field of ufology and conferences, you've gained quite a reputation quite fast, and that's a good thing.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm honored that you would say something so kind, and thank you so much. I'm not sure if it's exploded. I wouldn't go that far. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. And be honest, are you wearing anything Winnipeg Jets right now?
I am. I'm wearing my Jets T-shirt that I bought when the Jets first came back. The problem is I've got like two little kids now, so it's kind of got like grease stains all over it and snot stains and
that's
some
okay.
Yogurt, I think. But yeah, relatively keeping on top of the hockey. It's been a madhouse here in Winnipeg.
I can just imagine. I remember the Canucks run of 2011 and losing in Game 7 to Boston in the Stanley Cup Finals. And I know our audience doesn't like it when we talk hockey too much on this show, but we're a Canadian show, so you kind of have to put up with us. In Atlanta, I know you're down in Georgia where we are broadcasting in WQEE 99, Noonan, Georgia, just about an hour away from Atlanta. Just remember, this is part you guys, too, because Winnipeg received the Atlanta Thrashers franchise. So this is all about Atlanta and Winnipeg right now. So we got to tie it into our American audience somehow. But I'm glad the city is picking on up. I really am. My mom is a diehard Jets fan because she was born and raised in Steinbach, Manitoba. And, awesome. Yeah, the museum they have there, the big Mennonite museum there.
Yeah.
That was literally built by my great-grandfather, his brothers. My mom's schoolhouse is in there. There's a lot of really cool family heritage in that museum from our side.
That is, it's pretty cool. I've been there once actually, and it's pretty expansive for a tiny little town like Steinbach to have such it's a pretty sizable place to visit. And I like the sort of during the days they have like all the people all dressed up and they're walking around and like you can visit like the blacksmith and all. That's kind of cool. Yeah, it's a cool place.
I haven't been there since I was like 7 years old.
Oh yeah,
but I've been
totally
there.
Different. Yeah, it's great.
But I've been there. Now, let's get back to hockey for a second, because we got a lot of listeners in the Las Vegas area, too. Oh, they are going absolutely haywire. Come on, man. You've watched hockey long enough. When are these nights going to quit? It's getting ridiculous. If you're a pure hockey fan, you know how impossible it is this run the Las Vegas or the Vegas Golden Knights are making right now. It's impossible, MJ.
Well, I mean, they're basically a hand-picked team. I mean, when they're just it was like the cream of the crop. Like there's so much money involved in that team to make it perfect. Eventually, though, I think money only goes so far, and at the end of the day, spirit and heart, and the fact that hockey is our game and not the game of the United States, I think will eventually win out. But that could be now me just talking out of my butt, and now I've just lost everything for Canada for this hockey game, and we just lost the Stanley Cup. So, I shouldn't yap, but I've got a bit of yap.
Well, it's been 25 years since the last Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, Montreal in 1993. So we need Winnipeg to carry the torch, and wouldn't that be something? Something?
It would. Whether we win or not, this city is going to burn down on that day because people are going to go insane. But it's going to be a Canadian, it's going to be a Canadian riot. So we'll be very polite about it and apologetic, and we'll pay for all the damages. So it's fine. But yeah, the city's going to burn for sure. Like, it's going to be a madhouse. Oh, you still there, Dave?
Yeah, Mike in Manitoba on our chat room in Periscope is like, no worries, the cup is coming back to Canada. I said it.
There you go. Perfect.
Yes.
This is on Periscope? I'm gonna get on here.
Yeah, we're on Periscope as well. So just go periscope.tv/spaced out radio. Just make sure you turn your volume down there. So MJ, for our people here who haven't maybe had a chance to listen to you and what you're all about, how did you get involved in the field of UFOs?
Predominantly it was out of my personal interest and my academic interest. I'm really into subcultures, and I'm really into culture studies, and I guess critical theory, which is sort of like philosophy of society or philosophy of culture. And I find the UFO community to be sort of an interesting and fascinating group of people. And being sort of a kid growing up, I watched a lot of TV with my parents, Outer Limits and the X-Files and Star Trek and all that stuff. So it just kind of jived nicely. My academic background got me to kind of look at subcultures, and the UFO community is very much a sort of active subculture, an interesting one for sure. And my sort of interest in science fiction and sort of the strange and the paranormal and the esoteric kind of all worked out perfectly. And I met another Canadian UFO researcher by the name of Chris Rutkowski, and he sort of, I use the expression, took me under his wing a little bit, and showed me the door of the UFO sort of world, and said, here you go, buddy. Right through this door is, where you'll find all of the answers. Then he shoved me through and slammed it behind me so I couldn't get out, and I'm trying to jiggle the handle, but it's broken, and I'm stuck inside. And I wouldn't give it up for the world.
It is so addicting to get into this field, is it not? Especially when you realize, and I've said this numerous times on the show, and I'm sure you'll agree, that the minute you open a door and walk in, there's 10 more doors in front of you. And then when you open each of those 10 doors, there's another 10 doors each behind each of those 10 doors. And it just keeps going and going. And just when you think you've got it figured out, you're right back where you started.
Oh, sorry, I actually went on to Periscope and everything went weird. Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Well, not a problem. What I was saying is, when you open up that first door, there's 10 more doors behind it. And then you open up those, it's just this revolving door, and the minute you think you found something, you're right back where you started.
No, I agree with you. It's wild. I often say, for like, if you have an interest in UFOs and you are listening to someone, or you're at a conference, or you're reading someone's book, or you're listening to them on a podcast, or they're on TV, and they tell you this is the cause of the UFO phenomenon, or this is what's going on, they're lying, or they're delusional, or they're trying to sell you something. Because every time you think you understand something, or you get somewhere, you suddenly find more information or more answers, I suppose, that just lead to more questions. It is literally a massive enigma. And I don't know if there is an answer. But that's kind of the fun part, right? Is the mystery itself, and trying to piece a puzzle together that just keeps getting bigger every day, and more pieces keep getting added, and then the picture keeps changing, and then you lose the box that has like the actual picture on it, and now you're working from like you have no guide. It's UFOs. That's what it is.
Are you surprised that with all the research that you have found out and all the intriguing stories that are out there, that the mainstream, whether it's the public or the media or whomever it may be, really still seems very fickle about this entire subject?
Of course, it is very fickle. I think it's fickle for a lot of reasons, but I would say predominantly it's fickle because it doesn't want to address the possibility that everything our society has sort of built for itself could be built upon something untrue, or it could be built upon something much more complicated and complex, or built upon ideas that we deem to be perfectly normal and rational. But if suddenly UFOs are something that are real, and not only real, but sort of are driven by an intelligence, let's say, we sort of no longer are the authority to say, you know, the way we live or the way we act is correct. You now have something else that is potentially, you have now something else that is sort of potentially doing something different, let's say, and how destabilizing would that be? It would sort of challenge the entire framework of our society, whether it would challenge sort of how we, you know, use capitalism and how we consume resources, to environmentalism, to concepts of what it simply means to be an intelligence in the cosmos. It would change a lot of things, and it would change a lot of minds. And I think that there's a vested interest for a lot of people, and a vested interest for a lot of those sort of, especially within organizations or groups who hold significant power. It's in their interest to not have the status quo change. And UFOs very much alter the status quo if they turn out to be something sort of real, in the sense that there's an intelligence, let's say, behind them.
Do you think it's still fear that is managing a lot of people on the personal side?
Sure.
I'm not even getting into the media side yet, but the personal side, is it fear?
You know, I'm not sure. Maybe fear is not the right word. I think it's anxiety. I think anxiety is a better term. You know, the nice thing about being human is we're fairly adaptable. It would be interesting if, you know, I always kind of wonder what people would be like. Like, what would I do if I suddenly woke up tomorrow morning and on the front page of my newspaper was, you know, extraterrestrials have made contact or something? Like how would I react? And I can only sort of speculate, but, you know, I would sit there in shock, I'm sure, and I would read the article, and then I would go online and I would do research, but I'd still eat my Cheerios. I would still drink my coffee. I would still get in the car and go to work. And I would still have a day, and I would get back home. Like, you know, I mean, my life would go on. I think we're pretty adaptable. I'm not sure I don't think there'd be sort of rioting in the streets or anything. I think that's sort of silly. We would just sort it out. We would adapt. I think there's significant anxiety, though, and I think that is the biggest factor on a personal level. But like I said, I don't know. I think I give humans a lot of credit. I think we'd be okay overall. I don't want to use the term fear. Let's just put it that way.
What about the media side? I know people in the media coming from that realm where they don't even want to touch the subject. They think it's fake. They think that people who go into these stories are all a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing subculture that really doesn't have much education or dental plan. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, one academic who have been sort of researching for the book I'm writing, her colleagues often refer to her work in UFOs as white trash studies. And I find that sort of comical and obviously reductive and silly and pretty stupid. But I think the media has its hands tied, right? I mean, ultimately, the media is controlled by the people who do not want the status quo to change. So I think that's one aspect. I think it's also sort of inherent in media culture, and as well as an academic culture and in professional culture, to view UFOs as often as something silly or something, like you said, right? Sort of tinfoil hat wearing delusional people. And that's sort of been in place for a long time. And I think, you know, a lot of people within UFO research would go back and say, well, listen, this is purposeful. The media was sort of made to do this or has been infiltrated by, let's say, various intelligence agencies or the government to spin these tales. And we can debate whether that's true or not. I'm sure there is some evidence. There's a lot of connections between the CIA and media, for example, or Department of Defense and media. But I think the media is fundamentally made up of journalists and anchors and writers. And ultimately, they know fundamentally that alone, if they go down that road, it's career suicide. If suddenly every journalist started talking about UFOs without fear, then it wouldn't be a problem, right? Because ultimately you have critical mass. But again, the people who talk about UFOs are these one-offs, and very much it's a career ender. And this is why often, academics and scientists don't want to get involved in UFOs. If you suddenly get yourself involved in this this realm of study, suddenly you don't start receiving grants anymore, or your projects get cut, and any legitimate work you want to do is no longer being funded, simply because your name is attached a little bit to the UFO question. Really fundamentally, when you look at anyone who's engaged in UFOs from an academic background, like they're actual PhDs or they're actual scientists working, out of universities or whatever, typically they're pretty wealthy, or they have significant financial backing from someone who's wealthy and has an interest in the subject. They're not necessarily getting grants from universities, but they're getting private money. And that's how it's going to kind of work, I think. Media as well.
Yet, when we look at it, we see a lot of popular people coming on out. Robert Bigelow, billionaire.
Yeah.
John Podesta, a lot of pull. Paul Hellyer, north of the border here, as we start to focus on Canada. And yet, for the rest of the people out there, they have no time to even look at the status of these people. Even if you go to Senator Harry Reid or others, looking at the status of these people who are throwing real money at this, even taxpayer money, and yet they're silent. They don't want to deal with it that bad. Whether it's a scholar, whether it's the media, they just will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. And it's sad because they're losing out on probably some of the greatest research or stories that could ever be told, next to Jesus Christ himself coming back from the heavens.
I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of untapped potential here. And it's been left relegated to people like you and I, right? People who are not sort of professionals maybe within, the sciences or within academics. And we just sort of do it on our spare time, right? There's very few people within the UFO world who are sort of full-time involved in this. And again, I think a lot of these rich and sort of famous individuals like Bigelow and Hellier, for example, they definitely fund and do a lot of their research out of their own pocket. But I think it's still easy. Ultimately, it's still, a handful of people, and it's easy to write them off as just being nuts, or they've sort of, they've gone crazy. And I think that often happens. It's this weird, it's this very weird situation. Like Robert Bigelow's a great example, because he's one man, but he owns a massive aerospace company, and not only that, he's heavily intertwined with, American defense contracts, and he's heavily intertwined with NASA. And he's building the vast majority of their sort of life pod systems, and he builds a lot of stuff for NASA, for the space station and for various upcoming missions. That at this point, when he went on 60 Minutes and said, yes, I believe extraterrestrials are visiting us, you can't cut him loose. He's way too connected. And for NASA to suddenly say, oh boy, this guy's nuts, and then cut him free, they would have to go back to the drawing board and square one and figure out who's going to fund all this and who's going to build all this stuff for us. So yeah, I mean, he's in an interesting position because now he can sort of say whatever he wants to say. And his interest in UFOs has been around for a long time, but it hasn't really been in the mainstream news until that 60 Minutes interview, that sort of famous one. But,
and I loved when he said in that interview, I don't give a damn. When he was asked about what people were going to say about him coming out publicly about this, he was very, very agitated by that question.
For sure, and that being said, though, he's a billionaire, so he has the luxury of not giving a damn, right? He is very well set up within his various contracts with the American government, that he can literally say whatever he wants. They're not going to cut him loose. And that's great for him. But the rest of us, right, who aren't billionaires and who don't have contracts with NASA and the Department of Defense, we are kind of we have to be careful, right? And this is where a lot of scientists are and a lot of academics are. They may be incredibly interested. In fact, I know for a fact there are probably 100 or 200 scientists who hold high-level positions in universities and in other organizations who are definitely interested in the UFO subject, and they have to do all of their research quietly on their private dime in their own private time, while their sort of scientific work is very separate, and it's not related to UFOs at all, because that's how it works. They don't have the luxury to come out and say, I don't give a damn, because every other project they ever want to work on won't get funding if they come out as saying, yes, I am interested in UFOs or extraterrestrial life, and here's what I'm studying and here's what I want to do. There's very few people who have that ability to come out and say that publicly.
Do you think there will ever be a time where somebody else of Bigelow's stature or Harry Reid's stature, doesn't matter what side of the border we're on, Canada or the U.S., that some other big name maybe has to come out and start looking at this seriously? I mean, I don't think Tom DeLonge is a big enough name. I don't know who that would have to be. I mean, Dan Aykroyd did try in the early 2000s. He seemed to get brushed off. Is there a name out there that you can think of, MJ, that would totally turn the entire public's eye in taking this seriously?
Oh, man. One person.
Or maybe a couple people. It could be a group. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the only way that the public, like the mainstream public, would sort of really pay attention to the UFO question or the phenomenon would be if this individual, whoever they are, came out with evidence of something, right? You'd have to have something tangible that the public could sort of bite into, right? It wouldn't have to be, I'm not saying it needs to be a crash flying saucer or a body or anything like that, but there would need to be some sort of scientific work done, or some sort of, it would have to be scientific predominantly, some sort of scientific work done that it would get published, and then, the various sort of media outlets would pick it up and it would kind of go viral. But who that person is, I don't know. I mean, short of aliens landing on sort of the White House lawn, right, as the old cliche goes. If the president said it, I don't know. It's such a tough question. They would have to be obviously someone well respected, and it would have to be sort of almost out of left field a little bit. That's a tough one, Dave. I really don't know.
Does it have to be a government official?
No, of course not. No, I think it has to be. I think it's going to have to be someone who is probably sort of accredited in some way. I think there's going to have to be an academic connection, or, like I said, a scientific organization connection. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to be, me in my basement coming out with this discovery, because I just don't have the resources, right? Assuming I don't have a crash flying saucer in my basement, which I'm hiding, which I could be. NSA, maybe, if you're listening,
maybe.
It's not, I don't think it's gonna be so dramatic. I don't think it's gonna be quite something like that. I think it's gonna be slow. I think it's gonna be sort of these incremental movements where we start discovering things maybe about ourselves, right? Whether it's our consciousness, or whether it's our genetics, or whether it's something in our DNA or whatever that we can prove, right? We can run multiple tests on. We can create falsifiability tests and run them in laboratory conditions and all that stuff, that we can prove something about ourselves that links us to maybe something paranormal or something ufological or something extraterrestrial. Maybe I think that's kind of the only way it's going to happen. There could be maybe crashed material that's being picked up. We've heard this before, right? Sort of parts of flying saucers that were picked up that sort of people find, and maybe if they can find it and have it studied properly, and we realize it has sort of extra isotopes or something, or a strange isotopic number that isn't from around here, this would be quite strange, and would probably be a good step forward. But like I said, I think it's going to be sort of in these slow increments, sort of inching us forward. I don't think it's going to be one big sort of boom, here you go.
See, I'm not sure it would be an academic. I don't think.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think it will be. And, we heard Stephen Hawking before he died, saying that we should be really worried about extraterrestrial life coming from another system to come here. That could be very dangerous. Well, if you're an experiencer like I am, or hundreds of thousands of other people are out there, maybe in the millions, you already know it's been happening for a long, long time. And to say that we should be defiant or vigilant about it is a little bit dangerous, because that's like saying every person on this planet is dangerous. And I don't feel that the way academia has treated this subject, that you could have anybody come in and say, we have found something, and they are going to believe it. That being said, I don't believe it has to be a government official, namely the President of the United States. I'm just going to throw a name out there, and I mean nothing by this. I'm saying this rhetorically. Okay? Sure. But if someone like Oprah came out and said, this is real, this is something we need to focus on, and by the way, you get a UFO, nice. We all get UFOs. I think if someone of that stature, and there are very few people of that stature, actually came out and said, I believe in this, we need to discuss this, this is coming closer, the evidence is there, I think you win the public over much better than, say, if it was a government official or even an academic.
Yeah, I guess my concern is, does Oprah have evidence, right? Like that she could let the mainstream public see? Or would Oprah suddenly fund a massive project to investigate the phenomenon sort of properly, right? Like, is that what Oprah's doing, right? Like, just because Oprah says it, it could go that way. It could go your way, right? Like Oprah says, this is real, here we go. And her countless fans would say, oh my God, it's Oprah, she's right. Or her countless fans would turn on her like a pack of wild dogs. I don't know, right? I mean, I can't predict the future. I can only speculate. But I think Oprah's going to have something more than just her word that it's happening. We have tons of people in the UFO world who have given us their word, but not much else.
Well, all she has to do, though, my friend, is bring Robert Bigelow on her show.
There you go. Well, that would help. But again, I'm not sure if Mr. Bigelow has enough evidence to come out and fully say anything yet. I'm sure he has something, but I don't think he has enough evidence yet, because I think he would have released it had he had sort of 100% unequivocal, undeniable evidence of sort of the UFO phenomenon as being this or that, alien or not alien or whatever.
Well, it would be interesting, because I would love to see Oprah giving away UFOs. I really would.
That being said, I'm convinced Oprah's a reptilian anyway, so she's not going to say anything, right? She can't, because that's part of their plan.
No, I totally get you. I totally get you. I mean, her and the Queen dining on virgin children. I mean, who hasn't heard that rumor? Who hasn't heard that rumor? You know? But on a serious note, though, when it comes to the whole phenomenon and the media standpoint and getting the message out, granted, it's a difficult concept to do, but what are we not doing, in your opinion, MJ, to promote the message, to make it serious for these people? We could talk about conferences like the ACE conference in Toronto, UFO Con, Contact in the Desert. Let's face it, those are more like Comic-Cons.
Yeah. Okay.
But what could we do differently in order to prep the media that there aren't just a bunch of lunatics and wannabe tinfoil wrapped people who look like they're a potato ready to go on the barbecue, trying to bring this topic out? What do we got to do?
I think fundamentally that the UFO witness and the experiencer, it all sort of lies in them. Where it doesn't lie is in the sort of quote-unquote UFO experts and sort of the talking heads who show up at these conferences and spout nonsense, making claims, making truth claims. And that's what I consider the most dangerous. They make claims about, I know what's going on, it's X or it's Y, with no evidence whatsoever, and they promote a culture of tinfoil hat wearing, and they promote a culture of sort of chaos within the UFO community. I think the vast amount of experiencers I've spoken to and interviewed and investigated their sort of sightings for, or their experiences for, as best you can investigate. I mean, really, but they all typically, the ones who I think are legitimate, they all typically say the same thing. I don't know what happened, but this is what I saw, or this is what I experienced, but I don't know what it is. That for me is a sign of a sort of a. They're admitting to being, whatever happened is way out of my league here. Apart from the UFO, like I said, quote unquote experts who fill up Contact in the Desert and UFO conferences or whatever, and say, this is what you should believe. You should buy my book. I'm on ancient aliens, and you should trust me. Because I think that those individuals are sort of characters and actors within this field, and they're the ones who I think are causing the problems. I think they're the ones who are making us out to be a bunch of loons who believe in, blue aliens dressed as nuns coming to our conferences and listening to our talks. I think that there's a lot of nonsense happening. And maybe the blue aliens are dressing as nuns and coming to conferences, but unfortunately these individuals, these experts, don't have any evidence to support their claims, yet they're making claims. This is the dangerous thing. So I think if we want to get serious, and I think if we want to be taken seriously, I think we need to put experiencers, good experiencers who aren't saying they know exactly what's going on and whatever, experiencers who are who have dealt with something they don't understand and are prepared to say, I don't understand what happened. This is what it looked like, or this is what I saw, or this is what I felt, or this is what I experienced, but I don't fully grasp everything. I think they're the ones that need to sort of be spoken to, and they're the ones who need to be presented. It's all on them. The UFO experiencer, the UFO witness is the front line for us. They're the bread and butter. And we need to start taking them more seriously, and we need to take less seriously like I said, sort of the characters in the UFO world who are trying to sell books and make a name for themselves.
Well, two things there. Number one, and I think Grant Cambridge said it best on this show a few months ago, the experiencer is the forgotten one, is the forgotten information in this. But number two, it's the same people appearing at every conference, every year, every documentary, every television show. Their message doesn't change, just the title of wherever they are. I mean, at some point, when is the field of ufology going to recycle and renew some much-needed vigor and energy into this field with new and plausible information?
Yeah, that's such a tough question, and it's such a great question. I think when the experts, quote unquote, again, every time I say experts, assume I mean like air quotey experts, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not really, like, you can't really. I'm sorry. Let me clarify. One cannot be an expert in UFOs. You cannot be an expert in something that is unidentified. It's impossible. But back to my point, the UFO experts. Oh boy, I just lost my point. There you go. See, this is what I go on a tangent, and all of a sudden I'm lost.
Experts.
You were talking about recycling, yes.
Yes.
The UFO experts who make the boldest claims, the most conspiratorial claims, the claims about sort of secret shadow governments and cabals, and make claims about it's this species from this star system, or it's this species from that star system. It's all the ones that say things that they cannot corroborate with evidence. They're the ones who have the most followers. They're the ones who seem to attract almost like cult leaders, these sort of individuals who sort of buy what they say. And unfortunately, I feel bad for some people because they do fall into this sort of snake oil salesman trap. The problem is everyone who's not doing that, everyone who approaches the UFO phenomenon and writes about it and talks about it from the stance of, I don't know. I can speculate, and here's a speculation I'm making, and I admit it's a speculation, or I have this hypothesis, and I admit it's a hypothesis, I have no evidence to support it, but this is what I think. Like, all those individuals who approach it from a rational point of view, who approach it from a I don't know standpoint, they don't go to conferences because they don't draw crowds. Their books get published, but they sell 600 to 1,000 copies. Versus the guys who say, we got to raise the vibration level of the planet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or I was a space marine who traveled back in time and went to Mars. They will sell tens of thousands of books because, again, the claims are outrageous and people like to consume that, I think, and they kind of fall prey to it. So if you're asking me, what are these conferences going to do? Fundamentally, it's to put bums in seats. So they're always going to make room for those individuals who will be able to put bums in seats for them. And unfortunately, those people are these sort of quote unquote experts who make outrageous claims that they can't support with any evidence whatsoever. The rest of us need to sort of maybe appreciate and understand that and just deal with it, and try to chip away as best we can. The vast majority of people I know in the UFO community are relatively unheard of, and they don't have thousands and thousands and thousands of Twitter followers, but they're the ones doing real work. It's usually the people who are unknown that are doing the actual work in this subject matter. The quote unquote experts are the ones who are taking all their time getting paid decent money to travel around and speak at conferences and give the same talk all the time. So show up on Ancient Aliens every once in a while. So I don't know. I can't answer your question, but it's unfortunately a reality. It's become a cottage industry.
Speaking of that, MUFON has received a lot of hot water over the last 6-7 months. Ever since the New York Times article came out, people started putting two and two together. Robert Bigelow's ties to MUFON, that's come back to haunt them. More recently, it's been John Ventry and his racist comments that they haven't, really dealt with. Is MUFON a dying breed, or is MUFON a show or a group that really has the right concept but just needs a major overhaul and restructuring?
Yeah, that's another good question. I think MUFON has really lost itself in the last couple years. I think they started out, whenever they did, I think it was in the 70s, as a scientific sort of UFO investigative body. I think they started out with the right mindset, right? We're going to investigate this from as much of a scientific perspective as we can. And I think what's occurred for MUFON is, with the current leadership, the current leadership has learned or is adapting to what I just spoke about. You need to put bums in seats. And a big travesty that a lot of people in MUFON that I knew was their symposium last year in regards to the secret space program. If you're in the audience, you don't really know, MUFON's symposium last year was about this idea that there is a secret, space fleet, I suppose, that, humans and aliens have been working on, or whatever theory. And humans are actually much more advanced technologically than they let on, and there's sort of this breakaway group of individuals who have a space organization and whatever. Corey Goode is sort of very heavily involved in this concept. He's the space marine who went to Mars but traveled back in time and went to this star base on the other side of Jupiter or something. It's a very convoluted story. Anyway, I think MUFON has really lost its way here, because typically MUFON touts itself as a scientific organization, and then they had this symposium where they talked about the secret space program, and from what I understand, it was quite a busy symposium because Corey Goode was there, and sort of all the big UFO experts were there, and like I said, MUFON is trying to put bums in seats because ultimately for them, membership's down, right? Like there's only about, I think, 4,000 members of MUFON, which is pretty low for them. There's maybe about 400 field investigators. So yeah, MUFON is sort of losing people. They're bleeding slowly. But conferences like Contact in the Desert, which started out as nothing, are having attendances in the tens and tens of thousands. And numbers in the tens of thousands. So I think MUFON is trying to play this game here of we want to be MUFON, we want to stay scientific, and we want to investigate the UFO phenomenon the way we've been doing. But the problem is we can't do that if we can't get people to show up and talk about us and get engaged with us and, buy a freaking membership and get the damn newsletter. So they have to walk this fine line, right? MUFON has become it has always sort of been a public service, I suppose you could say. I mean, it investigates for free and it does its work for free for people. And it's relied predominantly on donations. But now, that system is no longer working because it doesn't have the critical mass anymore. The things like Contact in the Desert have critical mass. So how does MUFON adapt? So do I think MUFON is dying? No. Do I think it's bleeding heavily and it needs to seek medical treatment? Yes. I just don't know what that would look like. Do I think a change in leadership perhaps would be something that would help MUFON? Would it put it back on course? Maybe. I think the situation in regards to Mr. Ventry and the racism and the way MUFON leadership handled that situation and is still currently dealing with that situation by allowing Mr. Ventry to still sort of participate within MUFON, I think that itself is grounds for resignations to occur. However, I used to be a member of MUFON and I no longer am one due to that. So unfortunately, as a non-member, I can't, I can comment, I suppose, but I can't really hold them over the fire for it.
No, and let's be honest here. MUFON has some great people involved.
It does.
They do. I mean, I know a couple who are close to this show. Stu Bundy, who's very high on the executive. He runs MUFON Canada. His right-hand man, Ryan Stacy, very good people. They mean well. They're in there for the right cause. But I'm wondering, I think there is this sect in the United States regarding it, led by Jan Harzen, that really needs to come under question. And the MUFON members, realistically, in any other corporation, with what has happened here, the head would likely have had to resign over something like this. We've seen politicians resign because their assistant made comments like this.
Right.
And yet with MUFON, it seems to be status quo. Now, I don't know the ins and outs about it. I know I've talked to Chase Klutsky about it on this show. And, there are a number of other MUFON people whom I've talked to about this. And there are good people. There are very good people involved with this. And it's unfortunate that the business side of MUFON does all the silly things, but the actual people who are getting all the work or trying to do all the work are the ones who are, getting the blame and getting the razzing, which isn't cool either.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of great field investigators with MUFON. I think that there's the front line, right? The foot soldiers, right, are doing their duty, right? And they're working towards their objective, and they believe the objective to be noble and honorable, so they're going to do their work. Unfortunately, as it always often is the case, rather, it's the generals who are sort of screwing the pooch here a little bit. So, yeah, my concern is what happens then to all of those great field investigators and all those great volunteers who are legitimately interested in the phenomenon, who are legitimately trying to sort it out or put the puzzle together. and not interested in glory and not interested in having their name up in gold letters at a conference or anything like that. What's going to happen to them if MUFON does fold? You're going to lose a lot of good people because not all of them have the ability or the wherewithal or the charisma or the money or the time to start their own organizations or to, run the conference circuit or write a book or publish a blog or whatever. Like, they just don't have that ability. The way they engage with the phenomenon is through MUFON. And ultimately, they're the ones who are going to lose out. Not only that, you're also going to lose out on all the experiencers and witnesses who report to MUFON because really there's no one else they can report to. Sure, there's places that they can sort of log their information. But MUFON's really the only organization that can really muster a sizable force of field investigators to go out and actually do consistent investigations for sort of most of North America anyway. There's not a lot of MUFON investigators in other countries. There's a handful for sure. Australia has a pretty good contingent. I know there's a bunch in Europe. Africa and Asia have very few. But ultimately in North America, or at least in the West, if there's a UFO sighting, it usually goes through MUFON. Otherwise, people are going to be just posting it online, and it's going to get kind of lost in the ether of the internet. MUFON's the only one that sort of right now is able to sort of do the job and do the job across North America as one consistent sort of data center. So that's sort of that point, I guess. MUFON is still sort of necessary.
We got about 4 minutes left before we got to go to our first break of the night. What a fast hour with you so far, MJ. I want to start tying this into Canada. We know that Robert Bigelow bought into MUFON. We know that he bought files, that he paid his private money to people like John Carpenter, as well as other field investigators. We also know during that time he also took a lot of that money that he got from the U.S. government, of that $24 billion, and bought up a lot of other things, including UFO sites, websites, and research sites here in Canada. When you were part of MUFON, did you ever have any of your cases infiltrated by the Bigelow Group?
No, not once. Never. I would say, though, being in Manitoba, we had very few reports to MUFON. I have to be honest. Like maybe one a month. Like it wasn't very much. So that's one thing. I also I think I only logged one unknown out of my 2.5 years with MUFON. There was only one unknown UFO sighting that I ever had. So I can't say that any of my cases have sort of been co-opted by anyone. But that would have been intense. Holy, I can't imagine that phone call. Like, hey, this is Robert Bigelow. We're taking your UFO case from you. What? This is awesome. Go ahead. Like, I'd be so intrigued by what's going to happen. No, that's a bad joke. But no, never. Sorry.
No, but that's reality though, because we have Bigelow now representing, or Bass representing, UFO sites that are maintained here in Canada.
Okay, so I've never heard this. Where is this information from?
This is what I was surprising you with tonight.
Okay,
before the show. In 2009, he bought a company or a website and the information from a gentleman named Brian Vike, north of me in British Columbia, here in Houston, British Columbia. And if you go on Brian Vike's site, his old site, in the About section, let me just pull it up here. 1 second.
The Vike Factor.
Yes. There it is. Let's go to the About side here. About Us. This is the line. This is my favorite line here. Through Brian's hard work and networking, HBCCUFO.org, which stands for Houston, British Columbia, Canada, UFO.org research, became a very significant force in UAP reporting. Brian Vike and his research have maintained a consistent record of excellence over the years, which was evident in the very high traffic his website received. And we, the new management, Bass, are committed to upholding this successful tradition. We are ready to review cases. HBCCUFO.org research will continue the tradition of maintaining eyewitness contact information confidential. We will not give your contact information to third parties. Well, they don't have to give it to third parties, MJ. It's already into a black ops company.
Interesting. This is very compelling because I remember I received a phone call about maybe it was 20. Oh, now we're going into my personal life here. I received a phone call in 2014 maybe, where somebody contacted me saying, if you want Brian Vike's UFO files, all of them, you need to come pick them up, but you need to get here now. Like it was you need to fly, rent a van and drive it back, because we have it was in his basement or something. And I was like, well, listen, I can't, I got a new kid, and this is just I have a baby, I'm not going to be able to board a plane, fly down there, rent a van and drive back from BC back home.
My friend, I'm going to cut you off right there. We're going to pick it up right after this, okay? Because this is an important conversation here that we get into with Canadian UFOs. MJ Banias is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. If you want to check out his website, terraobscura.net. That's terraobscura.net. We're going to get more into Canadian UFOs with MJ right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Joe Roop in for Spaced Out Saturdays, and then on Sunday, our new host begins. Tessa Nicole Thomas takes over Spaced Out Sundays, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the Spaced Out Radio Network. We really appreciate you taking the time to do so. We are also live on periscope.tv. Every Monday through Friday, we are here. Hi, everybody on Periscope. And if you're looking for our archives, go to our YouTube channel. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and just follow through from there. YouTube.com/SpacedOutRadio. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Oh, I hate you right now, Bill. I hate you right now. And I know you're watching on Periscope, too. Tonight's password, hexacosio hex... a conahexaphobia? What the hell is that, Bill? Honestly, what the hell is that? I have to put a letter quotient on this. Hexacosioi hexaconta hexaphobia. Whatever it is, Bill sets your password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read The Encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Tonight we have Canadian ufologist MJ Banias on the show tonight. His website, terraobscura.net, if you want to check him out. To me, MJ is one of the quickest learning and most influential Canadian researchers when it comes to UFOs. Calls it right down the line. Welcome back, MJ.
Thanks very much.
Hey, right before the break, we were talking about Brian Vike selling out to BAS, which is Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Systems. And we know where that money came from. It came from the $24 million that kind of came through the government, and we all learned about that back in the New York Post or New York Times article back on December 16th. Do you think that with Robert Bigelow buying into the Canadian ufology field, which he did, do you think that all of a sudden changed things on the way Canadians take a look at the field of ufology, knowing that potentially their personal information could get in the hands of a very specific government contractor in the United States? Because I feel very uncomfortable with knowing that potentially my personal information has gotten into the hands of the U.S. government. Can we prove it? No. Is the potential there? It's very possible. What's your idea?
Well, I mean, just realistically, I would say it's more than likely that the vast majority of Canadians have their information in the hands of American intelligence agencies, whether it's CIA, NSA, who knows. I think Canada and the United States, we share a lot of our intelligence, and whether we like it or not, we're being spied on. If you're using an internet connection, your internet information is definitely being routed somewhere. So is it legal or illegal? I would say the vast majority of security and intelligence services would probably say it's not about it being legal or illegal. It's about the fact that we have the information and we're going to do that because that's our job. So, do I have a concern that, let's say, Bigelow Aerospace has my information? I would be surprised if they, have my information personally, but ultimately, that's the game, I think. And I think that the sooner we recognize that, the more maybe we can sort of wake up and deal with the fact that all of our data is already being monitored anyway. And then we can maybe take steps to start shutting that down. That being said, I don't know if society is going to kind of run that way. We all still use Facebook. We all still use Twitter. We all still use Instagram. All that stuff's out there. There's a lot of metadata already about us that's that's not tracking us, let's say, but let's putting a picture together of us somewhere on some algorithm run by some artificial intelligence system. So, do I have a problem with it? Sure, but I'm not going to quit using Facebook anytime soon.
Well, let me ask you this then. I'm going to take this one step further, leading to information that I've found out over the last few months. What do you think about the RCMP giving your information to the United States military?
Yeah, and I am sure it happens, and I'm sure it's part of the deal. We all form a larger intelligence community, right? The United States, Canada, all of us, Australia, England, we're all kind of part of the same system, I think. So for sure, it happens. Well, I don't know how to avoid it, right? I mean, unless you start living in a cabin in the woods somewhere.
Well, let me tell you how it happens, if you don't mind.
Sure, please.
I happen to have a conversation with a member of the Canadian RCMP who just happened 3 years previous to be in electronics and navigation in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Right.
Previous to becoming an officer. And I was talking to him about a personal situation here that my daughter decided to go to a Halloween party that happened to be infiltrated by a bunch of 19-year-olds who decided to give a 14-year-old girl a bunch of booze. So that's the reason why I was talking to them, because I wasn't too impressed. The party got busted. I was that guy. But
That's
I'm okay.
fine.
I'm very much okay with that, doing my parental duties. So, out of the blue, I said to this officer, I said, what is the RCMP's regulations, if there is any, regarding UFOs? And he laughs at me and he goes, boy, did you ask the right guy. And he told me about his history working in the Canadian Armed Forces. And he says, okay, he goes, this is how it goes. When someone calls into 911 or an RCMP office reporting a UFO, pardon me, before that he goes, in the air or on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, because I expected him to laugh me off, I said, well, let's start with in the air. He goes, okay, this is how it goes. He goes, when you call in either to 911 or to an RCMP detachment reporting a UFO, they immediately ship the call straight to Ottawa, RCMP headquarters in the Canadian capital, who immediately contacts NORAD, gives the information to NORAD, which of course is in Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado, and they immediately dispatch the two closest CF-18 Hornets to try and intercept the craft. I said, okay, well, what if it's on the ground? He goes, same thing. He goes, I'm not too sure what happens, but he goes, you could probably expect the police or the military to cordon off the area for evidence. I said, so what you're saying is every Canadian who has reported a UFO to the Canadian police, the RCMP, has literally had their information sent to the American military. He goes, essentially, yes.
Right.
That doesn't make me feel very comfortable.
So what's the alternative?
I would hope that it would stay in Canada. I have no problem with my information being in Canada. But to go to an external government that we know has been covering up secrets in this, it's very, very intriguing to see that they are allowing people's personal information across the border and to potentially be stored in some sort of computer vault about their report. And it also made me wonder, because I never understood, MJ, why a few Canadian people that we have had on the air had talked about their experiences with Men in Black, FBI, CIA coming in. I never understood that. I never understood. I always thought it was BS. But then you put it together, well, now you know why. Because Canada's military, we don't have money for a fleet of black helicopters.
Right.
Yet
but we do have intelligence agencies. I mean, we have CSIS, and then we have what's the new one that it's the Canadian Security Establishment or whatever it's called, right? We have a few, I would say, intelligence agencies that would probably be able to sort of put agents in the field, let's say, if they needed to actually go investigate something.
Mm-hmm. I have no problem with the investigators. What I do have a problem is private information that Canadians are willingly sharing, because up here, as well as I do, for the most part, people still trust the police.
Right. Oh, here, yeah, for sure.
All right? It's not like it is down south. And when you have, you're giving your police, you expect their word is good. You totally expect their word is good. And when it's not, and your information is going elsewhere, like across the border, that is scary.
Yeah. Sure, and I can see I can see a lot of people's concern with that, for sure. I think, unfortunately, though, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the reality I think we sort of live in, right? I mean, I don't, like I said, this is outside of my expertise here. I'm sort of just, I'll have this conversation with you, but like I can't really offer much benefit maybe to this conversation.
And that's very much fine. But as a UFO researcher, okay, or even as a Canadian citizen, would you want your personal information going into the hands of a foreign country?
Right. Yeah. No. And obviously, if in this case, no. Just as a Canadian citizen, of course not. Right. I would like my information to stay within my own sort of border, of course. But I'm also not foolish. I mean, at the end of the day, Canada is very much interconnected in every way with the United States. So, yeah. I don't like it, but I also know it's happening. Like I said, I don't really have much more to contribute other than that.
Do you think then, okay, let me rephrase this then as we focus more on Canada here. Do you think then that Canadian ufologists, whether it's yourself, Chris Rutkowski, Victor Vigiani, Grant Cameron, whoever you want to call on this, should be maybe attacking this subject from that point of view?
Interesting. So kind of going after exploring the way Canada deals with UFO reports and that it goes to NORAD or it goes to the United States.
Or, as we see with websites, Robert Bigelow.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You know, I have to be honest. This whole Vike thing, you just told me, and I had never seen this or heard of this. And this is, I mean, it's a decade old, but I find it very compelling. Like, this for me is an interesting development. Because for me, I think I would love to know where all of that information is now going. So is Brian Vike's old website, it hasn't been sort of updated in about 8 years or so. Is information still being pumped into it from witnesses or experiencers, and is that information being collected somewhere by Bigelow, and what, like you say, is that information being used for? This is interesting to me. This is very compelling to me. So I definitely think this is something I may pursue. I may start sort of poking around and trying to figure out, you know, why this website was bought and where it's sort of where this information is going. So I think that's a good way of putting it. I think that's definitely something that I would look into because I'm interested in that. Do I think that, you know, Canadian UFO researchers are going to make any headway by going to our sort of security establishment and our intelligence establishment and saying, stop sending our information to NORAD? I don't know if that's going to change.
Oh, I don't see that changing at all. But
maybe just pointing to it or dealing with it, making it public.
I think Canadians need to know that if you report a UFO to the RCMP, every piece of information you give the RCMP is heading south. Mm-hmm. And until the RCMP tells us differently, that no, your personal information is not, the address is because this is where the account happened, then I would feel comfortable with that.
Right. Maybe I'll write a letter to the RCMP and ask.
Why not? I would be very interested in that. I would be very interested in that.
Hmm. I'm gonna write this down. Look, I'm taking notes. I'm literally taking notes from this interview.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go. Well, let me ask you this then, because as we continue on with UFO talk here in this hour, especially north of the border, were you able to get a UFO coin on the Falcon Lake?
No. They sold out so fast.
I'm looking at it right now. They are selling for $763.
Yeah. Yeah. They produced only so many of them, and they were selling for what, like 100 and something, $120 or something.
Yeah.
And they sold out very quickly. I wasn't able to snag one.
Now, the Royal Canadian Mint is obviously in Winnipeg, your hometown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about getting your opinion of this statement, because in Canada, for our American listeners or our listeners around the world, here in Canada, we don't make big deals out of anything. You know, we just don't. We let everything slide as long as the coffee is hot at Tim Hortons and the donuts are fresh and the hockey game is on. or some Canadian football is on, we're happy people. But this is the point that I wanted to get to, because the Falcon Lake incident happened in 1967, I believe, where a gentleman named Stan Mahalik was apparently or allegedly, actually, we're coming up to the 51st anniversary of this on May 20th. So I'm glad we're talking about this. All right. He was out in this field. He was a rock collector. He is out in the wilderness, and all of a sudden this craft comes over and beams down on him. His clothing were burnt. His skin was burnt, and he spent time in hospital. It's literally one of Canada's top UFO recordings ever.
Yeah.
But this is the question that I wonder about, and I wanted to ask you about this. All right. Is a lady named Alison Crawford, who's a spokesman for the Mint, said the Royal Canadian Mint is known for having polar bears and maple leaves and beautiful natural settings on coins, but we also do a lot of coins that reflect Canada's culture. And some of our best Canadian stories are actually supernatural stories, citing the Ogopogo in Lake Okanagan and Quebec's werewolf-like Loup Garou. We wanted to share this story with the rest of Canada. Now, I'm going to be 45 years old this year. I've never thought of this experience as part of Canada's culture. Maybe I'm reading into this a little too much, or maybe I'm just way too much tinfoil on top of the Brill cream on the hair. But does that line that reflects Canada's culture stick out to you at all?
No, I mean, yeah, I think you're being pretty conspiratorial here, Dave. I don't think that there's some massive plot. I think it's just a matter of a whole bunch of people at the Canadian Mint tried to figure out what kind of coin we're going to do next, and they started Googling stuff in Canada and anniversaries, and this one popped up. I think this was a random, lucky sort of event for them. I'm not going to claim that this is some big Canadian conspiracy. As you said, we're not very conspiratorial as a people.
That's people kind. But nonetheless, though, I'll disagree with you a little bit on that.
All right.
Because I find the timing very ironic with everything that was happening in the United States, with the To the Stars releasing all the videos, with Luis Elizondo going public, the New York Times article, Canadian media outlets picking up the UFO story. Global did it. CTV did it. The CBC did it, as well as local regular television programming did it. And I just found it very interesting that the Mint, out of all topics, would jump on this.
Well, I mean, you need to think, at the end of the day, I'm sure the Mint also, like, again, the people who sat around this boardroom table and made this decision, they know that coins that feature polar bears and owls don't sell, right? They hold on to those things forever at $120 a piece, or whatever they choose to sell them at. But you strap a UFO onto a coin, and like they know there's probably a portion of the public, both Canada as well as in the United States, who are going to buy that coin. I mean, the coin sold out. I'm not sure this happens very often for the Royal Canadian Mint to release a coin that's worth about $20 in silver at $120 a piece to actually sell out. So I think, again, this could have been a bit of a marketing strategy. I agree with you. UFOs have been a hot topic for the last year. 2017 has very much been a UFO-heavy year, and 2018 as well. There's been a lot of mainstream news about UFOs. So maybe they just made a clever marketing play and knew that they would sort of be successful.
Obviously it would. And it was. And realistically, I wish they would have brought out another
do a second run,
1,000 to 2,000 of them, because it is an incredible coin shaped like a guitar pick, and
it's beautiful.
And at night it glows.
Yeah.
So you can see the beams of hitting Mr. Mahalik at that time. So, I mean,
super cool.
They did a great job with it. And I'm not saying it wasn't a marketing campaign or just a marketing campaign that they got lucky with.
Because, so are you suggesting that, Dave, that it's like some sort of disclosure, like a soft disclosure?
I think this is my opinion of it, okay?
All right.
Every coin that that the Canadian Mint makes has to get approval from the federal government and the finance ministry. If I've done my research correct, I believe that's what it is. They have to sign off on it. I'm very curious to see why the Canadian government would sign off on this coin if really they've never talked about this subject. And we're not about these types of stories. We never have been. We swept Shag Harbor under the carpet, and Paul Hellyer during that time was the Canadian Minister of Defense. Right? And he said, well, I knew nothing about it. I didn't really know. I didn't know what was going on. And then all of a sudden, 40 years later, UFOs are real. Aliens are here. 5 species. So I'm wondering what is going on here, wondering if this was Canada's way or the Canadian government's way saying, we know what's going on. We're going to allow this to happen. Once again, I realize there's tinfoil involved. But
a little bit.
But and I trust me, I can feel you rolling your eyes at me right now.
I'm not rolling my eye. I am trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm not rolling my eyes. I assure you, I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to piece it together in my head.
I guess what I'm saying is when I put all the facts together with what's happening in the United States, with what's happening here, it's a little ironic that the Canadian Mint, who needs approval to put a coin like that out from the finance ministry in Ottawa, that they would choose that and call it part of Canadian culture. Rather than for what it is, we see a giant disclosure movement, or as Grant Cameron likes to call it, a confirmation movement going on south of the border. And what has Canada done? What has Canada's role been in this?
I would say Canada's role is sober second thought. I don't know. I feel, I'm not. Yeah, this is interesting. Listen, I'm not going to disagree with you. It could be, maybe, I don't know. It could be some sort of confirmation, as Cameron says, or disclosure sort of move on part of our government. It could also be just sort of a bit of a publicity / marketing gimmick. I agree with you that UFOs are not really part of the Canadian culture. I'll give you that. We're not a very UFO sort of... they've never really been an aspect of being Canadian, let's say. Not to the same extent of sort of as it is in the United States. I agree with you there. But I don't know, Dave. I can't go down that conspiratorial road with you yet.
Oh, you've been hanging out with Chris Rutkowski way too much.
It's not. It's maybe.
I'm teasing.
I know.
Nonetheless, I am teasing, even though it is partially a shot at Chris because for some reason he never returns my emails to come on the show. Never.
He gets a lot of emails. I'll give him that.
Yes.
He's been very busy since this whole. He was on CBC tonight for Ideas, that one of their shows, and it was about UFOs in Canada, actually. And the Falcon Lake case was sort of related. So if you get the CBC and you can listen to Ideas, it's out. But he's been very inundated with work, I guess, in regards to the Falcon Lake thing.
Why do you think that we haven't taken advantage of these incidents, whether it's Falcon Lake, whether it's Shag Harbor, much like what we have seen with Roswell?
Right. Yeah.
Where
I think it's starting. I think there is a Shag Harbor UFO festival. I know that they do on this weekend, like the current weekend right now, this weekend and next weekend, they do like tours of the Falcon Lake site that you can go on horseback and you can go see it. And they do a little mini talk, and there's a little mini, I wouldn't say it's a conference, but it's a gathering, let's say. So I think it's starting. I think that culture maybe in Canada is starting. But you're right, it is quite small here. But it doesn't also have kind of the publicity. I mean, it's funny. Like, I have to be honest. Like the Roswell case, when you really look at it, the official information and the documentation on it is very limited from official sources. It's Roswell is much more mythology than it is fact. I'm not talking about the alleged crash or anything. I'm just talking about sort of the hype around it and all of the information that existed around the Roswell event is much more sort of mythology. It's been mythologized. It's been a lot of there's a lot of talk and it's much more sort of oral in tradition. Let's put it that way. Whereas if you look at the Falcon Lake case or the Shag Harbor case, there are literally stacks and stacks of documentation from RCMP, from the CIA, from the Air Force and Blue Book. There's like I said, stacks of paper of official documentation concerning these two cases out of Canada, much more so than Roswell. Yet Roswell is somehow sort of this linchpin UFO case. If you are in any way interested in UFOs, you've heard of Roswell, but you've not necessarily heard of Shag Harbor or Falcon Lake, even though those two cases have been much more thoroughly investigated by official government organizations. So, as well as private investigators. So I find this interesting. It could be that culturally UFOs are much more of an American thing. Canadians are less likely to make a big deal of something, like you said before, until we sort of maybe have evidence to support it. I don't know. I think it's starting. But culturally, again, like you said, we don't really get worked up about too much. But there's a Shag Harbor UFO Festival. Go ahead.
Should we in this topic, though? Should we?
Well, I have to be honest. I think Canada is... One thing Canada does have is a long, I think, heritage of... I don't want to say... Sure, let's use the term paranormal. A long heritage of paranormal culture... Again, it's not really the right term, but when you really look at sort of the people who make up Canada, from sort of the very first people who are here and in our Indigenous communities to now, the paranormal and the spiritual have always kind of played a role, right? When we go to museums, when I go to the art museum in Winnipeg, for example, there's a whole section dedicated to Inuit art, and the vast majority of the Inuit art is all sacred. It's all sort of almost paranormal in nature. It's about shamanism, and it's about spirits, and it's about ghosts, and it's about the blending of reality and the spiritual realms, and those two things coming together. So I think we do have a long tradition here in Canada of paranormal events, and I personally consider, just as my own opinion, the UFO phenomenon as something sort of paranormal and more maybe spiritual in nature than it is sort of physical, nuts and bolts craft from another planet. So I think we do have that heritage there, and I think that that's an important thing we need to look at. I think, and we talked about this last time, actually, I was on your show, how my one wish would be to be invited to various sort of Indigenous communities and hear their stories about their encounters with the other, whatever that other is. So I think that's part of our culture as a country. What I don't think we have is that sort of technological UFO heritage. I think we have a paranormal one, but not a technological one. You know what I mean? Like Cold War technological, like that sort of 1940s, 1950s flying saucer evolution of ideology.
Do you think, though, that the way the Canadian government is set up, where, we have a lot of secrets? We do. Because the Canadian people, for the most part, up until probably the last 5-10 years, have never really questioned what the government is hiding or what they are doing. We're becoming a little bit more vigilant with that now, especially when it comes to taxpayers' dollars and so on and so forth. Do you think that the government has maybe prided itself and hid this secret easily right in front of everybody's eyes because nobody really cared to ask? It was all about the wheat prices in the prairies, or how to build Toronto, or the Quebec situation. Were they going to separate? Were they not? British Columbia, always whining about something.
Again, I don't know. Like, I can't really speculate. Like, I personally have never thought that the Canadian government, for example, had the answer to the UFO question. Do I think they have classified information concerning UFO sightings, or do they have classified maybe evidence or like gun camera footage, much like the sort of recently been released through sort of the TTSA and through the Pentagon? Do I think that stuff exists? And do I think Canada has some of that that's classified and top secret? Yes, I think that exists. But do I think Canada or any country has an answer? And, the bodies in the basement and a crash flying saucer sitting in some underground base? I don't think so. I don't think that's what's going on here. Again, that's my personal opinion. I'm not making a truth claim here. For all I know, there could be bodies in a basement somewhere. But I don't think that's what's going on. Because I think that would have been... No, I'm not going to say that. I just, my personal opinion is that's not what's going on. I think that there's information out there that they have that they're not sharing for some reason. But again, I'm not a very conspiratorial person. I as an individual typically trust like the government. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask.
Well, we do know though that in Canada's version of the Nellis Air Force Range in Nevada, up in Cold Lake, Alberta, even going back as far as the 50s and 60s, they were testing out human-made disc-shaped craft.
Right.
So there is precedence of trying to test some sort of flying saucer in Canada, back when we were actually trying to make aircraft before the whole Avro incident.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're talking about the Avro car, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a video on it. You could go on YouTube and actually see it.
There's one. We have an air aviation museum here, and there's one sitting in the hangar. You can go check it out. I have a picture of me in front of it, actually. My daughter, she's 2. She loves airplanes. Her jam right now is airplanes, and she loves going there because she likes talking about like jets and all that stuff. And she reminds me she talks about propellers. And I'm going to tell a cute story, but we're walking through the airplane, this aviation museum, and she points to like an old propeller engine, but it's like a radial engine, and she goes, "Daddy, radio engine," she says. I burst out laughing. I thought it was the cutest thing. So there's a cute story. But yeah, she often looks at the flying saucer and points to it and says like, "Daddy likes aliens" and stuff like that. So it's
nice.
Yeah, it's infiltrated her life too.
Yeah, and my little guy, his conspiratorial side is Megalodon.
Ah, yes.
Yes, yeah. He's 4, and he has a toy great white shark that he calls a Megalodon, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so we're all about Megalodon here. You're about UFOs and aliens.
She's
I'm about
aliens.
Megalodon.
Yeah. She has a little toy alien that she plays with in a UFO that she flies around. It's pretty funny. How we corrupt our children, don't we? Like when you get into this, when you get into the UFO world, like we're a corrupting force.
Yeah, we have to. That's good parenting. Right. It's good.
You got to brainwash them early. You got to get them. You got to get them all involved in the tinfoil hat wearing early.
Hey, why not? Why not? Prepare them. But, I mean, that's actually a good point that you're making, because there's a lot of people through this whole To the Stars Academy and through what has happened in the denial that UFOs actually have anything to do with aliens, or pardon me, UAPs have anything to do with aliens or anything of the sort. There's a lot of people campaigning out there that the reason why they're doing that is the current generation, say our age and older, MJ, are not prepared for anything like that. It would scare them. It would cause a lot of religious problems. It could cause a lot of fractions in society. And then there are the people saying that your age, because you're younger than I am, our children's age and the generation below that will eventually be introduced to extraterrestrials because they will have been brought up with thinking that there's a good possibility they're real. What is your thought of that scenario?
It's interesting. It reminds me of a book by Isaac Asimov called Childhood's End. where an alien craft lands, but no one's allowed to see the aliens for 30 years or until there's a whole generational shift. And then roughly 30 years after the alien craft lands, the alien finally sort of shows itself. And not to spoil anything, so spoilers if you haven't read Childhood's End, I'll give you a minute to turn off your feed. Okay, I'm going now. The alien looks like the devil. He walks out and he has massive horns. He's totally red. He has a tail, big wings. He literally looks like sort of the physical representation of the devil. And the aliens were basically concerned that because we have this devil character in our mythology, that humans would be afraid of this sort of being because it resembles the devil. And it took a whole generation of people, the younger ones, to be like, oh, that's what they look like, and not really have that connection or that fear or that anxiety that surrounds, I guess, devil imagery. It's interesting and it's compelling. I think when you look at generations as they go on, especially I look at I teach, so I look at some of the students I teach who are 13 and 14 years old. Their opinions on gender or their opinions on race or culture or anything are much more enlightened, I think, than maybe that of my grandparents or that of some older people I know. Right? They've grown up in a world where ideology is different, and they've grown up in a world where their interpretation of the world itself is sort of a little more fluid and a little more open. So maybe I think it's a legitimate way to think about it. I think the younger generation would be more open to a drastic shift or change compared to maybe people who've been around a little longer and have sort of established ideological or sort of paradigm constructs that they've developed for themselves. It's a fair point because we see that happening right now with sort of very human and very normal things, such as like the transgender movement, for example, where it's for me, it's just a normal thing. Of course, gender is fluid. Why wouldn't it be? Whereas then you talk to someone who's maybe in their 60s or 70s, they would perhaps say that's, balderdash or something, and they would potentially say something sexist. I don't know.
No, and I understand that, and I can appreciate that. Do you think it has anything to do, though, with Canada becoming one of the world leaders when it comes to a lot of people dropping religion and becoming more of an agnostic-type nation?
Sure, yeah. I mean, and we're a very, we're a very socially minded nation, right? We're a culturally minded nation. I think Canadians in general, we just are... I think we're willing to give anyone the benefit of the doubt, and we're willing to let people live their lives however they see fit, so long as they're not hurting anyone, right? I think we've done a fairly good job of establishing ourselves like that. I think we have a lot of good systems in place and a lot of good organizations in place, and maybe a good educational system in place that sort of teaches empathy and sympathy for sort of other people and people who are different from us. I can't speak for the United States. I really can't. But I mean, we don't have a lot of the a lot of those problems that, especially the southern states are dealing with in regards to, racial issues or gender issues. Canada isn't perfect. We definitely have flaws. We definitely have flaws surrounding sort of Indigenous issues in this country for sure. We're not perfect, but I think we're moving in a positive direction versus slipping backwards into a fear-mongering state or backwards into a nationalistic or a sort of a quote-unquote patriotic state of us first and everyone else second, right? I don't think we live like that. I don't think that's part of our culture. So maybe, you know what? I gotta be honest, if aliens are going to land somewhere, it's going to be Canada. Because, we're just generally nice.
But that's quite possible. What would it be like, or what would be the reaction if Canada was to be the disclosure country?
Oh man, it would just, the Americans would be so pissed off. It would be lovely. No, I'm just joking. I'm just angry about the whole hockey thing, right? Like, the last thing I want is Vegas. to win anything.
I can't. Vegas cannot win the Stanley Cup this year. They just cannot.
Right? And maybe it's all connected, right? Bigelow, maybe he's involved in the Vegas Knights. Maybe Winnipeg is going to be the site of disclosure because, this could all be connected. This could be all one big
UFOs and NHL hockey. No, I don't think the little weasel in New York, Gary Bettman, would allow it.
They're going to land during the Stanley Cup game, right? Like the Stanley Cup game, Winnipeg is going to be playing against Vegas or something, or maybe the Capital. I don't know. We're going to be playing against some American team. And literally in the middle of the damn, game 7, the thing's going to land. And like every single Canadian is going to be like, do I change channels right now? Or do I watch the hockey game? What do I do? And I'd say they're landing here. That's my opinion.
That would be
fantastic. It would be amazing. I don't know what would happen. I don't know what would happen.
I wonder if Justin Trudeau wears a bunch of tinfoil to go introduce himself.
No, I think he would wear their clothing. He'd wear like the clothing of their people and very awkwardly, right? And he'd be really overdressed. Like he wouldn't they're gonna come out in these like basic jumpsuits, and his is gonna be like a bright gold, and like, okay, that's a wedding jumpsuit. We don't really dress like that for like meeting, just a species where that's a wedding thing or that's a special occasion outfit.
Oh, I could see him totally doing something. He'll probably try the Mork from Orc Nanu Nanu.
There you go. And
I think that's what he does.
He'll try to do like a traditional dance, and it's going to look silly.
It's funny because one of our Canadian listeners on Twitter, Canadian Joe, actually put a meme of Justin Trudeau doing the dance on stage.
The famous, yeah.
Oh, America, you have no idea. You have no idea.
But that's like, and at the end of the day, that is the stuff we deal with, right? Like we don't have Stormy Daniels, and we don't have Michael Cohen, and we don't have our leader being investigated for colluding with Russia to win an election. We don't have that, right? We don't have that. So our biggest issue is what he wears on a trip to India and the dance.
Well, don't forget dining with terrorists, paying millions of dollars to terrorists. I mean,
we're not perfect.
I know we're not perfect. He just needs a good shaking.
Once in a while.
Well, more than once for him, but nonetheless. Okay, we've established, America, that Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will wear his best alien outfit. Yeah. Use the Mork from Orc hand signals when the aliens land in Winnipeg during their during Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals between the Vegas Golden Knights. Why can't they just put Las Vegas on there? And the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
We've established it. That's when it's going to happen. Game 7. The Jets are going to win. Jets are going to win. Even the Maple Leaf fans are cheering for you guys.
Oh yeah, we're the only Canadians in it right now. It's not a good situation for our country. We're heavily outnumbered.
How do you feel though? A quick hockey question. Here's the irony: the Las Vegas Golden Knights, their captain is Canadian.
Yeah.
Yet the Winnipeg Jets captain is American.
I know. Listen, we don't bring that up. You know what? Let's not overcomplicate things. They play for Winnipeg or they play for Vegas. That's all it is. We're not gonna muddy those waters.
All right.
Sorry, we just can't.
That's okay.
It's not a safe conversation.
We only have about 7 minutes left with you tonight, and I really appreciate you coming on in here and doing this. On a Canadian UFO front, because we're going to end it on this because we're talking UFOs over Canada here, are there any good stories that you could share with us that have happened recently that have really caught your attention?
Sure. One that was really interesting happened a couple years ago, or maybe a year ago, over one of the Great Lakes. It was a porter flight that had to make an emergency landing because of a UFO sighting. So I guess the radar, this happened, I think it was last year. The radar tower, I guess, picked up something in the same vicinity as this flight, this porter flight, and this object wasn't supposed to be there. And I guess the pilot allegedly saw something, but he's not allowed to talk about it. So it kind of, that went away quite quickly, and the media stopped reporting on it. And I know that a lot of the airlines, and I think actually like Transport Canada has rules in regards to what pilots are allowed to say in regards to sort of incidents in the air. There's a big hush sort of mentality in Canada in regards to sort of legally telling pilots what they can and can't say. But this Porter flight was diverted and had to do an emergency landing because of something that just showed up in the middle of one of the Great Lakes, right in front of the flight. And they had to make an evasive turn. Apparently people inside the plane got shook up pretty good. Like stuff flew around the cabin because the plane had to do a quick maneuver. And then had to basically turn around. So that was an interesting case because it was very well documented. There's sort of that information's out there, but there's a lot of mystery surrounding it, and we haven't really heard much about it recently because it kind of goes very quiet, and you can't really investigate it because no one will talk to you. Like I can't call a porter and ask questions, nor can I call the pilot and ask questions because ultimately they could be let go. Or potentially sort of fined for saying anything. So that was one interesting case. I've been working on a case sort of on a more personal note with a sort of a person in rural Manitoba. Unfortunately, I can't say much about it right now because I'm writing a book. So if I said anything, my publisher would become sort of quite angry with me that I'd be giving away sort of the goose. But there's a great case that will be sort of presented in my book that I'm currently writing. Out of Toulon, Manitoba. So that's a very recent one, happened within the last couple years. So yeah, I have to kind of stay quiet, but lots of UFO sightings in a very small area.
Quick question for you from Leo in our Periscope audience.
Sure.
He's asking, do you know if Canada gets a lot of black triangle reports?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the numbers. Chris Rakowski does his annual UFO report. I know we do get black triangles, but they're not the most common. The most common objects that are seen in Canada are orbs, like predominantly orange orbs are the most common, but orbs of sort of various colors seem to be the current most popular thing that Canadians are seeing in the skies. And they sort of dart around. I have a friend of mine actually who his story is going in the book, but I can talk about it a little more because it's sort of smaller. But he was in Gimli, which is a town in Manitoba, and he saw sort of 3 red orbs kind of dash through the sky and then do a quick maneuver, turn, loop back around, and then fly over a lake, and sort of moving not like any aircraft would move, at least no conventional aircraft. So his story kind of compounds that a little bit for me, that people are seeing sort of strange lights in the sky, but they're not objects per se, like metal sort of physical, like black triangles or saucer shaped. They're predominantly sort of balls of light that are pulling maneuvers that if a human pilot was involved, they would be turned to applesauce inside the cockpit. So that's what we're seeing right now in Canada a lot.
Have you ever seen a black triangle?
I have never had a UFO sighting or a paranormal experience.
You're boring. I know. You're way too Canadian for this.
I'm one of those people. Like, I have never had any UFO experience, or really paranormal. I mean, I've had strange. Sorry, let me put it this way. I've had strange experiences that I could say could be paranormal, but I also am able to sort of say, well, it could also be this or it could also be that. So I've never had a life-altering paranormal / UFO moment. No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people. Yeah.
That's terrible. I've had I don't know if I can call it the pleasure of seeing 2 black triangles.
Oh, wow. Well, you're a lucky guy.
Well, is it luck, though? Is it luck?
Well, I think it's. I think individuals who have experiences with the paranormal. I'm gonna lump the UFOs into the paranormal. Sorry, and just again my personal opinion on it. I think individuals who have experiences of this nature have those experiences for a reason. I think it's somehow connected to the individual, whether it's biological or genetic, or it's in your DNA, or it's simply a matter of consciousness or something, the I don't know, is tying the individual to the experience. So you are maybe not lucky, but it's somehow connected to you in some way. That's my current speculation.
That is crazy, my friend. We only got about 90 seconds left with you. Do me a favor. Tell everybody what's on your website, your books, what's coming up, what's going on with MJ.
Sure. So if you want to find any of my writing, it's all linked through my current website, which is www.terraobscura.net. My focus predominantly is sort of on UFO culture and the UFO community. I'm really fascinated by UFOs, but I'm more fascinated by people who experience and see and engage with UFOs. So that's my website. You can also find my work on Mysterious Universe, which is a sort of a paranormal, I guess, esoteric news site. I'm in the most recent issue of Fate magazine, so if you pick that up, I'm in there, as well as I have a chapter in Robbie Graham's book, UFOs Reframing the Debate, which you can get on Amazon. And I'm, like I said, in the middle of a book project, so hopefully I finish the book sort of this summer, and then it should be published maybe early next year. We'll see. But I will keep you all posted on that.
What a great time. You know,
I had a blast.
It's always a blast to have you on, and honestly, my friend, continued success for you, because you are one of the growing names in this field. And when I say this, we've had discussions on this show about who under the age of 40 is going to take over, and I think you're one of them. I really do think you are one of them. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate that. It's tough because you sort of reflect on what you're doing and on your work, and it's I generally think the stuff I produce is awful. So I'm happy that someone disagrees with me. Wonderful. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. Hour number 3, Everett Themer is going to join us. We're going to continue UFO talk, see where it goes. We might even open up the phone lines on this Friday night. I don't know. We'll check it out right after this on Spaced Out Radio. Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
There's stories, then there's the truth. Do any of us really trust the news anymore? This is Jamie Sexton, owner of Rebel Planet News. The third Thursday of every month, I appear on spacedoutradio.com to bring you the truth you deserve, without mainstream media lies or alternative media fear-mongering. We'll get to the heart of the story and deliver the truth you're seeking. So come join us here for the Rebel Planet at spacedoutradio.com.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. The weekend crew is back. A little bit of a different sound. Saturday night, we got Spaced Out Saturdays with Joe Roop, who's going to kick butt and take some names, and then Tessa Nicole Thomas comes in for her first show. So make sure you come on in and give her a little clap, a little golf clap. She'll need that. Spaced Out Sundays, Spaced Out Saturdays, both starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network, everybody watching in on periscope.tv. Thank you so much for tuning us on in tonight. Really appreciate you doing that. And if you want to know where we hide our archives, go to our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. I would greatly appreciate that as well. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hexacosio hexaconte hexaphobia. Nobody knows what that means. I'm not even reading it twice. Probably butchered it. But Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on our website, go to spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read the Encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. We say a big thank you to MJ Banias for coming on the first 2 hours to talk about ufology in Canada and the state of where it is and UFOs in general. Hour number 3, we got Everett Themer coming in from the Encounter Online. Everett, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Been a while since we've had you on.
It has, hasn't it?
It really has. But we're glad you're here, and we're glad we're doing this. And, you know, we were talking about UFOs coming up here, and it's been kind of a focus. We did, this is the first week where we've actually only had like one UFO show, because, you know, I'm all about the aliens. I love me the aliens and the UFO stuff. Do you think things have quieted down quite a bit on purpose, or do you believe that the UFO side of things, people are just kind of washing their hands of it right now because it's like, oh, another UFO story? Are you serious?
I think it's a little of both. I think that To the Stars has had some, let's say, public relation mishaps here and there. Things didn't go quite the way they planned, especially with Tom DeLonge. And I think that they're just kind of stepping back and maybe letting things settle a little bit. And, you know, the public's out there looking at the skies and waiting to see what's happening next, but they don't, there's no new really exciting thing on that front either right now. So I think it's a mix of both, and it's just a little bit of a lull.
Is it because they haven't brought out a new UFO video of late?
Have they actually ever brought out a really new video? Everything that they've put out has been available, it seems, prior to them releasing it, hasn't it?
Yes, but, I mean, there's been some sort of corresponding news in between, you know, and then all of a sudden it seems like this entire To the Stars group has gone a little bit silent on everything.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's a bit intentional. I think they're maybe licking their wounds a little bit and letting things settle down and, you know, waiting for their opportunity to put something out there again, because they're not going to put something out there unless it benefits their agenda or what their goals or plans are. So I think we just kind of have to sit and watch them and analyze what move they make next and see what they release next. But it won't be for the benefit of, you know, the people in general, or because they feel the need to release more information. It's going to be because they have something in play.
I think we're going to open up the phone lines. 1-702-302-4556 is the number. 1-702-302-4556. Everett, there was a story recently in the last couple of months here that was broken by George Knapp. Great UFO reporter. We all know him, tied in with the To the Stars Academy. Always seems to have something new on Robert Bigelow. And recently it was announced that Bigelow hired 50 scientists, former police officers, military officials who are retired to start looking into more UFO type investigations. Whether they're consultants or actually working on materials, that is up in the air. But the fact that he has hired another 50 people to work on this, what does something like that tell you?
It makes me wonder, well, first of all, we don't know exactly what they're doing. Is this an effort to either circumvent or try and expand upon the information that he's gotten from MUFON, or is this something from another direction? I think ultimately what it tells me is that he, and we've known this already, he takes the UFO alien ideas very seriously. He has a lot of money to invest or play with. So I think it reinforces the idea that he's very serious about something. I just don't know what that is.
Do you think that maybe he has taken the next steps on maybe that he does actually have some alien material there that is, allegedly reported? Or do you think that maybe he's working on something completely different?
Well, if he has material, then I think a clue to that would be what these ex-police officers are doing, what these ex-military officials and scientists are doing. I think we need to watch where they go, what they do. Because if this is something to just legitimize some research, then I don't think there's much to it. If all of a sudden they're sort of sequestered or on a specific project that we can find out about, or at least find the rumors of, I guess would be the better way to say it, then maybe there is something worthy of being guarded and seriously investigated. I mean, I don't know if he has alien materials. I'm open to the idea, but I'm not entirely convinced yet. So to answer that, I don't know. I hate to say I don't know, but I think that ultimately we have to see what he does with that personnel, or where they go, or how they operate. And I know that that's hard in corporate, especially defense contracting cultures, but until we know a little bit more, I'm not sure that we can make a definitive judgment.
It is a little eerie in regards to what is actually being there. And is it his own, curiosity that is getting this going, or is it his own, wish to see something happen, or does he actually have something that we don't know? I mean, this man is very mysterious. We do have to admit that.
Yes. And just because he hired these people, that's just a drop in the bucket in his budget. I mean, he operates on a different level than probably all of us, and even most businesses. So to hire that many people for him is probably not a giant deal. It's not a big deal. It might be equivalent to a medical lab or a commercial lab hiring one or two additional staff members. And I think we need to keep that in focus too, that just because it sounds like a large number and they're labeled with what can be interpreted as formerly having important positions in various fields, in Bigelow's world, what does that mean though?
50 people's a lot of people though, man. 50 people is a ton of people to be hiring on that. And if you think, okay, that the type of people that he hires, if they're making an average of $60,000 a year, you're looking at a couple $1 million.
But is a couple $1 million a year a lot of money to Bigelow?
No, to us it is, but for the reason they were hired, if that is the case, that they were hired because of that, that is a huge, huge step towards everything.
It could be. I think the jury's still out on that. I mean, I want to believe that he has something, but in this case, his tie to the stars actually makes me wonder. In my mind, he's losing a bit of credibility.
How's that?
I just, To the Stars has kind of distanced themselves from Tom DeLonge after some of the statements he's made. We haven't seen a lot of activity from them. We know some of the things that Tom has said about, the various endeavors that To the Stars is going to be involved in, not just the alien searching, but, different forms of media that they would be producing. And then you look at all of that and you contrast that to Robert Bigelow, who, although it may be a personal interest, he has the resources of a global company behind him who seems to want to look seriously at this topic. They kind of go against each other. I can't get past the fact that I see what To the Stars has done and become since they first announced, back in December. I just see them as a hindrance to what I'd like to think he's really trying to accomplish.
Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers has been very upfront with what he believes is actually happening with these metal alloys that are allegedly at Bigelow Aerospace. He doesn't believe that they are there. He believes that this whole thing has been a little bit of a wash, especially with it recently coming out that the reason why nobody was able to get any Freedom of Information Act passes, when you apply for a FOIA request on the ATIP program, is because nothing was actually named under the ATIP program like was originally disclosed by the To the Stars campaign. And in fact, it was called AAWSAP, which is Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Programs. Does this put a black eye on the To the Stars Academy when they were promoting ATIP, when that wasn't the project that Luis Elizondo was working on at all?
I think it does. I think it certainly hurts was it ATIP? One of them, the different programs, they actually left the word foreign out of it, I believe. And if you add the word foreign, I believe, to the beginning of it, all of a sudden it's not so much extraterrestrial as it is just looking at foreign weapon systems and analyzing the threats that other nations could have.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think it is, too. We're going to just hold on, Everett. We got a phone call here. Area code 601. Who are we speaking with here tonight? Caller, are you there? Area code 601. We cannot hear you. If you were on, I don't know why we cannot hear you, but we cannot hear you whatsoever. Everett, are you still there?
I'm still here.
All right. Try back, caller. We definitely want to get you back on here. All right. We got to end this call, and we will, try again if you don't mind. But the idea behind this whole aspect, Tim Doyle isn't sure that there actually is any actual metal in that entire process. And we're going to try and bring the caller back on here. 601, who do we got here?
This is Jake. You hear me?
Jake, what's going on, man? Thanks for calling in.
How you doing? I'm a Sinbad in the Periscope chat.
Hey, Sinbad, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing? I just want to ask a question. Maybe a couple of years ago, I seen what I seen in the sky was not necessarily a UFO, but not necessarily military. But what I seen was 7 aircrafts. Every 7 aircraft had a triangle of red lights. Like every single thing had like 1, 2, 3, lights, and then all of a sudden they were in a single file line. So you had 7 different aircrafts that had 3 lights that were red in a single file line. However, what was so weird about it, when we walked outside, we looked up in the sky and they kind of sounded like generators. You know how like a generator sounds like?
A real deep buzzing sound.
Yeah, kind of like a lawnmower or something like that.
Heard that?
So all of them sound kind of like a generator, a lawnmower generator, and kind of a loud engine noise. so all of them.
Jake, can I ask
like
where did this happen?
Okay, it was it's in southeastern Mississippi. So we walked out and there was 7 different objects. Each object had 3 different lights that were all red. Correct? And they were all flying in a single file line, but they all had this super loud sound. Have you ever heard anything like that before?
I've heard the buzzing. The first UFO I ever saw actually had that deep buzzing sound, almost like a generator type sound. Almost sounds like a little bit deeper sound than a C-130 Hercules that the military uses. And so I have heard that. Were these lights in a triangular figure, or were they in, what kind of shape were they in?
Okay, there were 7 of them, and then there was every single one of them of one of the 7 were both in triangle figures. So there was 7 of them with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All 7 had 3 triangle lights that were completely red.
So
okay.
Go ahead, Ev.
I was just...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just wondering, with the buzzing sound, it doesn't sound like a drone kind of thing, but I know in my area, some of these little drones that you can buy now on eBay and at Walmart and things, there are becoming these drone clubs that will put LEDs on their drones and then fly them around, and those have been mistaken for things like that. But with that buzzing sound, I don't think that it can be something like that unless it was very close to you.
I mean, it was literally probably about 400 to 500 yards in the air. But I will say this, I haven't said this yet, is that all 7 of them had blinking lights on the bottom of them. But they all sounded like, they literally sounded like 7 different generators or lawnmowers or something like that in the air, just flying simultaneously, just in the air.
Is there any military bases nearby?
So far as air bases, no. I mean, there's like a few, Navy bases and all that, but so far as like Navy bases or Air Force bases, no, there's not.
That is definitely interesting. I would suggest we look and see if we can find any other similar sightings, either in the area in the time frame or even across North America, just to see if there's something similar that can be compared to it, and maybe we can correlate something, whether it be time or location, just to see what's going on, because that is an interesting, it's an unusual kind of sighting to see that
because,
many.
With that being said, it's like I grew up in like super rural area of this like part of the South, so I know what a lawnmower a motor sounds like, or so far as a generator, or this and that. But we just walked outside, and then we automatically realized, like, oh, there must be a neighbor across the pasture running to like a generator or something. And then later on, we found out that is not the case. And then we looked up, and then it literally, this sounds super weird, but it literally looked like it was 7 people in like a hovercraft, or not like hovercraft, but like a hang gliders. It literally looked like 7 hang gliders in a row, but all 7 had 3 red lights that were in triangle figures falling in a completely straight line. But they were super loud, like a generator.
So it was actually the sound that attracted you first, that brought you outside?
Yeah. So we walked outside on the porch, first of all, and then all of a sudden we heard this noise that sounded like a lawnmower or a generator. And then we looked across the pasture, and then there was no one out there. So we was like, where is this sound coming from? So we looked up, and then that's when we seen the 7 3 triangle or red lights in a row just following each other. They were just super loud. That sounded like a generator or a lawnmower engine.
And you said they were about, what did you say, about 1,000 yards in the sky?
Yeah, 1,000, 2,000 yards in the sky. They honestly wasn't that far up, you know.
That is interesting. Could you guess at how big they were? If you can say they were that far away, how big do you think they were?
I would say the only thing I can tell you is each light. So just imagine a triangle, and then imagine each light, you know, so far as in a triangle figurature, I would say maybe 4 feet between, like 4 feet from the very left part of the light to the middle part of the light, and then 4 feet back down to the bottom right side of the light.
Wow.
Interesting.
That is interesting and unique.
I think you should contact Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and go to ufoseekers.com. Tim would take your report. He is, I think, very good at following up on information. And the one thing that I like about him is he is independent. So that way you don't have any issues with being prejudged. Now, that being said, he's out in California, and it would be obviously difficult for that to happen. But I would highly suggest getting a hold of Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers at ufoseekers.com. He would probably be able to give you some serious answers on that and take your information, because that's literally what he does for a living.
Yes. I'm very familiar with what he does, yes.
Yeah, he does great work. Great work.
You know, this would be an interesting test, too. Aren't MUFON's files all public and available? It might be an interesting case to just go look and see if they have any reports in the area and the time frame around that area, and see if we can find something that correlates it. See if we can find some MUFON files.
Yeah, I mean, I never reported this to MUFON or anything, because, like, of course, like everyone else, I kind of felt like, you know, kind of less sustained or less, like, trustworthy of the MUFON. But it happened about 4 years ago, but, I mean, I just never really said anything to anyone about it. But, yeah.
So I want to ask you an interesting question here, if you don't mind. Why did you hold on to it? Why didn't you report it?
Because I really didn't get starting into the esoteric or like alien paranormal stuff, you know, kind of that train of thought area until like several years ago. But when it happened, it was like, I remember, like, when I thought about reporting it and MUFON, I remember seeing this CNN halfway docudrama or documentary by it was Morgan Spurlock. He did this like one season thing with CNN about just documentaries about these random things, and there was one season that was about MUFON. And that one season, it was like randomly just meeting these like kind of weird older guys in the middle of the desert. and they was training him like, hey, you're a MUFON dude, this and that, so you can like, you're a MUFON, like you're certified MUFON now. We walk outside of this office, and then like you train this and that. I lay this thing on the ground and answer this question. And all of a sudden, like they trained Morgan Spurlock, which Morgan Spurlock is a guy who, as you may know, he stands from the what is that McDonald's documentary? You know what I'm talking about?
Super Size Me.
Yes, that's it. So these MUFON guys out in Nevada got the Super Size Me guy out there, and they're like, hey, this and that. Now you're trading to be a MUFON guy, even though you're famous for being a Super Size Me dude. And that's what kind of really just brought me back about MUFON, honestly.
I think the thing with Morgan Spurlock was, at that time, wasn't he doing a show for CNN where he kind of went out and did these unusual things, sort of along the lines of his Super Size Me documentary? And I remember the MUFON one, and I think there were like a season's worth of him doing different things.
Yes, it was, because I remember one season was him meeting like MUFON different people, but the people he would meet that were in MUFON were just like, they would literally look up at the sky, and no matter what it was, a satellite or a shooting star or something, they would claim it's a UFO or something. And I'm like, that really doesn't make any sense, because your sample size of what you took out of the MUFON people or any UFO base, the base of the UFO people, it just really didn't make any sense.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for calling on in there, Sinbad. Appreciate you taking the time and becoming a fan of this show. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You have a good night.
You too, my friend. You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's Sinbad from the Periscope chat room. He just found our show like a few weeks ago, too. Great to have him call in. If you want to call in, 1-702-302-4556. The number once again, 1-702-302-4556. Tell us your UFO story. I'm curious. I'm very curious.
Hey, he mentioned something that kind of got me thinking.
Sure.
He didn't report it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's becoming sort of an attitude of, what's the point of reporting it? I mean, people have been collecting these reports for over 50 years, 60 years now. And nothing's really, even MUFON, except for producing their show and being bought by Bigelow, they really haven't done anything. There's nothing concrete or solid coming out of any of these reports other than the collection of the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that hinders people reporting them in a way?
I'll answer that with a story. Before I got all involved in this, and I was starting to see UFOs quite a bit, around 2013, Everett, I actually reported a couple of cases to a local group here in British Columbia called UFO BC. And I have to tell you, I was highly disappointed with it. The first time I contacted them about an orb that came right in front of my house, it was a big white orb, and 4 of us saw it on our patio. And reported it. It took them about 3-4 weeks to finally get back to me on it, to actually have a phone call about it. And basically, I was dropped like hot water, where they say, well, if something comes up out of this, we'll let you know. And that's the way it was left. The second time, when I reported my black triangle, nobody got back to me. Not a soul. My phone never rang. And when I look at things like that, I can see where people, everyday Joes who may not have a lot of information like I didn't have back then, I can see where a lot of people just say, screw it, I gave you a couple of options. You dropped me the first time like I was a ton of bricks. The second time, you didn't even bother taking my report or calling me. And I'm sitting here struggling, trying to figure out an answer. Why should I report it anymore?
And that makes sense.
Because a lot of people, Everett, and I'm sure anybody out there can admit this, when you go through something like this, okay, even the police will tell you, if we have anything, we will get back to you. Or if we have nothing, we'll try and get back to you just to keep you updated. Or, hey, call me at any time if you're looking for an update. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it usually works. Not with them. And I think in this field, because we have a lot of amateurs in there, combined with a lot of people who maybe don't have the greatest person-to-person skills publicly, it doesn't surprise me.
I can understand that.
What do you think? What's your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I will confess that I made a report to the National UFO Reporting Center. And I don't know if it was a UFO. I don't know what it was. But I made the report because I saw something, so I thought I would go to that website and just research and see if anybody else had seen anything or made any reports on that day. And there were none. So I did fill one out, if for no other reason than just to put it into the database. And I never heard from anybody, but I also don't think that the National UFO Reporting Center makes it a practice of investigating or contacting people. They kind of are just a clearinghouse or a collection center for these things. But when I was flipping through or scrolling through the reports that they had on file, one of the things that concerned me is a lot of them were amateurish, questionable, and I'm not questioning his credibility, but what I'm saying is when it's left to somebody to do it themselves, they don't always know what information to put in or how to describe something. Maybe they need a little help having the words pulled out of them in a way to describe it accurately. So I could see somebody looking at those and going, I don't really want to put mine in with some of these. And probably the next one I see, I wouldn't report to them. And then, then there's the whole MUFON situation. I probably wouldn't report it to them. So at this point, where do you go? Who do you report it to? And I think, and I wonder, is that sort of becoming the discouragement? It used to be people didn't want to face the possible ridicule or looks that they would get from making a UFO report. Has it switched from that to now there's just not a reliable or credible place to report one to?
Well, you know what? Here's an interesting comment from our Spreaker chat room from Portals of Knowing. I don't like some investigators scrutinizing my quote-unquote credibility. Just because I'm not an ex-military or police officer or pilot and lack a penis doesn't mean I didn't see what I saw. And I can understand that frustration. I totally get that frustration. It's uncomfortable when you feel like you're giving them information and you're trying to figure out what is going on, and you're feeling like you're being talked down to. Because
that's a big problem.
Because the investigator on this side is the so-called expert. They're the titled person. Let's face it, nobody's getting paid by MUFON. Nobody. So when you look at it, okay, and I'm talking on the field investigator side there. So when you look at it, these people, I mean, and we've seen them on this show, we've seen them all around, that the minute people get titled, they all of a sudden are, or they have an attitude. You know what I'm saying, Everett?
Yeah, but a good investigator should be able to come in and talk to the witness and not have that condescending attitude or make them feel uncomfortable. They should be able to come in and ask questions, but also answer questions and help the experiencer or the witness come to some conclusions or figure out or become comfortable with what they witnessed or experienced. It shouldn't be I'm the expert and I'm going to judge and criticize everything you have to say. It should be more of we're going to figure this out together kind of procedure.
So what's the proper way? How should a UFO case be handled then? In your opinion? And I realize you don't do it. I'm putting you on the spot here. But if there was Everett Thiemer's UFO reports, how would you handle a case in order for the public to feel safe and that you actually care about them and their story?
I think first you have to take their statement. Let them tell their story. And then you kind of have to go back and walk them through it and, in a way, question what they've witnessed or seen, confirmed different things. I don't want to say you have to, push certain things, but you do have to, you kind of have to criticize a little bit or dig in and make sure that they're being accurate and correct, but not in a confrontational way. You just have to ask questions and work them through it and walk them through it and, get as accurate of a statement as you can. To me, and I guess maybe it's one of the reasons why I don't do things like that, is really the experience is great. And it's good to take the information, but I've kind of gone past that, and I want to see, or I'd like to see a plan in place for what people do with all of this information now. Besides sell it or provide it to corporations or other divisions of the corporation that they belong to. What is the purpose of collecting it all? I that's where I'm at now. I want to see whether it be published, as a study or something like that. I want to see results or something come of taking statement after statement.
I don't think there is anything wrong with that. I mean, if you have a compilation of UFO sightings like Sinbad who called in, okay, where there was another 7-8 people who saw that, now we can try and put the puzzle pieces together. And you keep everybody in touch. That's the big thing. People just want to be in touch. They want to be the people who are not dropped like a hot potato. And
exactly, and that's...
Go ahead. No, you.
I was going to say that's why I'm not a big experiencer. I haven't had tons of experiences, but that's why I went onto the National UFO Reporting Center site. I just wanted to see if somebody else had seen what I saw or reported what I saw. And even though, there was nobody else on there in my area at around the same time that had made a report, but I still wonder if 3 miles away or right down the road, is there somebody there going, I saw this. Should I have reported it? Am I glad I didn't report it? Did they weigh the options and decide that it's just not worth the criticism still? And, I think that ultimately it's making everybody feel comfortable to make these reports that is going to lead to more. Because if you have 5 people on, 4 different sides of town who don't know each other, they all see the same thing and it kind of triangulates to the same area in the sky, that is a lot more validation for the experience than some guy with his cell phone, who caught a strange light in the sky.
Gail has an interesting question here in Periscope. She's saying, do you think if MUFON would cease to exist if they ended their symposiums, or do you think they would be bigger and better?
If they end, Do they cease to exist, or do they end their symposiums?
If they ended their symposiums, do you think they would cease to exist, or would they become better?
Gosh, at this point, I hate to say it, but I think they would cease to exist, because that's pretty much the only way they make money now, isn't it?
Well, they have a lot of funding. I don't think they'd be going away. The symposiums that they do have, I think, do bring a lot of very good people and good conversation out to the public and the masses. However, I mean, when you're waving the flag, I mean, it's just like waving the flag out of any company you work for. You give loyalty, right? I think MUFON right now needs to be more worried about cleaning up some of their house, their upstairs house, their business house, not so much their investigative house, but their business house, than they do worrying about what's going on in the field. They have great people involved with them. However, I think this is from a top on down, that their leadership has shown to not have much of a backbone when it comes to situations, whether it's talking publicly about what Bigelow actually bought, lying about it, hiding it. We saw, okay, let's take Gail, for instance, who just asked that question. She sent an email to MUFON's PR person, who clearly stated in that email, we have never sold anything to anyone. Paraphrasing here. Yet Chase Klutsky comes on this show and says, yes, MUFON did sell files. MUFON members did sell files to Robert Bigelow. Caught them lying right there. Why not just tell the truth? That's the problem. This upper echelon of MUFON, in my opinion, and Everett, you can concur or disagree, I'm fine with that, but they have a hard time telling the truth.
I completely agree. I think that MUFON's credibility is very low at this point. I think they're going to struggle for a while to get it back, and I don't know if it'll ever be back to where it was, because now everybody is so connected, and there are so many other ways to get information out there. At least on the individual, at least as an individual way, you can put it out on social media, and somebody might, reply and say, hey, they saw the same thing. And there are so many different ways to do this now that I don't know if MUFON will ever recover the credibility. It might take a whole new organization to step up and begin to do it, and hopefully, they don't succumb to that typical corporate mindset where, one level of management is doing one thing, and a different level of management maybe has another stance, and they don't seem to know exactly what everybody's doing. I think that's what happened to MUFON. I know that there are some great people in MUFON, but sometimes, you can be a great person and associate with a company or an organization that has a bad reputation, and it reflects on you. So I don't know if their credibility will ever be recovered. And maybe, there are some new groups out there that maybe one day will step up and grow to, I don't want to say be a competitor of MUFON, but be another outlet for people to share their information with.
Be prepared, Everett. We're going to the thought of the day right now.
Fantastic.
Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where during the day we pose a question to you, a random thought that comes to my mind leading up to tonight's topic of discussion, and we bring it to you. And we love to bring your answers on the air. So tonight's Thought of the Day is the following. What do you think we are not being told about UFOs? Everett, I'm going to ask you with that one right off the bat. What do you think we are not being told about UFOs?
Excuse me. I think that we're not being told that something does exist. We're not getting the confirmation. I don't know that, we have aliens in military bases reverse engineering and working with our personnel. But I think that there are things out there, and there are craft out there that are controlled by intelligent beings, and we're not being told that they absolutely exist.
I agree, and I'll take it one step further. In my answer to that, I strongly believe we are also not being told that there has been contact made. There's been too many pieces of information out there that would say differently. So let's find out what the audience says. Let's go over to Twitter. Jake replies, though it is kind of esoteric knowledge in our community, I feel that the majority of general population do not know about the different races and types of ET beings. They only think about the Greys. I disagree with that. I think there's a lot more humanoid coming out. What do you think, Ev?
I think that people are beginning to move away from or accept other races besides the Greys. And personally, I would be happy with confirming one before I, start postulating how many there are. But I certainly believe that there are more than one. I don't know if they're reptilian or the Nordics or the Greys, but I can see there being more than one. Let me put it that way.
Danny states on Twitter that most are from deep within the Earth. The hollow Earth theory holds a lot of merit, and I believe that the flat Earth theory was a direct response to distract us from it and keeps us divided in our community. You see more news now about flat Earth and hollow Earth, and I find that telling. I think that's just a distraction, both of them. A distraction. Although he does have a point. As much as I hate to admit it, the whole flat Earth thing seems to be gaining traction continually. It's horrible.
Yeah, that's just... I think they got some good marketing people, and I believe that I read something that, while they're called the Flat Earth Society and they touch upon it a bit, they don't necessarily really believe that the Earth is flat.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a social group.
I don't know. The whole iceberg thing that we're surrounded by a wall of ice just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. Graham says, there are reversed engineered versions that fly around with cloaking technology, are hard to spot, and can move slowly or quickly, high or low. I believe my sighting, 50 feet above me in 1994, was a 3-sided reverse engineered vessel. It was very impressive, but very intimidating to say the least. And that goes to the point where we have alien contact. If we have alien contact, we're obviously going to trade technology. So I find that interesting. UFOnly says pretty much everything. Everything. Over in Liverpool, in the UK, Disclosure Team says the truth is multifaceted. Unidentified aerial crafts are all of the above, and they know it. The truth is too difficult to deliver and too difficult to accept and understand. That is a very power words there, don't you think, Ev?
I think so.
All right, let's go over to our Facebook page. Brent says, as I hit my microphone there, pretty much everything. The government here seems to keep all kinds of secrets about all sorts of things. Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I just don't trust the government for that kind of stuff. But I can understand that they don't want to panic and disorder. Pardon me, they don't want panic and disorder, which is what some people would create. There's logic behind that, Everett, because we've talked about it on this show. I've been a big proponent in saying do not come out with it because I don't think the majority of the public could handle it.
See, I disagree a little bit. I don't think there would be the mass hysteria. I really don't. I think so many people have been introduced to the Drake equation and, little bits and pieces of things that I think, while there would probably be some disruption and panic here and there in certain demographics of the population, I don't think there would be mass hysteria or a breakdown of civilization.
We'll agree to disagree on that one because I can see a lot of people putting their Bibles in one hand and their guns in the other and firing at anything that looks suspicious in the sky. I really could. Really
You sound
could.
like a true American.
Well, I think this goes way beyond America, my friend. There's a lot of religious people on this planet. And let's face it, you go to some of these Middle Eastern towns where in the middle of their markets they're showing off and selling guns, and they're like, oh, just fire into the air to take your test. You don't go to a firing range. You just shoot it up in the air. They tend to forget the bullets come back to Earth.
I seem to remember seeing a story where somebody was killed in a market recently because somebody had fired up into the air.
Does not surprise me. Does not surprise. What surprises me is it doesn't happen more often. All right, let's continue on here. Linda says, my dad, Thomas Townsend Brown, knew a lot about UFOs in the mid-50s, and I believe that there were things he intentionally obscured. However, the entire picture is being uncovered now. It is time. Well, of course it's time. I just don't know what time it is. Robert states, obviously they exist. Let's say even only 5% are real. That's thousands of sightings. And Everett, I'm going to burn through a couple more of these because we are running out of time. Richard says, the truth is coming and you aren't going to like it. Pat, just how much do those anal probes hurt? Ask Whitley. John Edmonds from the Stardust Ranch chimes in. Government won't divulge the big picture, not because of UFOs or aliens, because the real information would recreate a different perspective of how things really work and where, in the grand scheme of things, they actually exist. That is food for thought right there. And the final word of the night. We're going to give this one to, who do we give it to? Let's go to Scott. For one thing, Dave, they know what is coming. Second, they know what is waiting out of sight that will come to evacuate some people. Third, they know what they found buried under ice in Antarctica, and it scares them. And last, they know how much people will act when they find out the truth, which is more, much more, than the alien cover-up. Ooh, sounds eerie. Everett Thiemer, good to have you back on the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. We also want to say a big shout-out to MJ Banias for coming on to the first 2 hours of Spaced Out Radio. MJ's website, terraobscura.net. That's terraobscura.net. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Touring right now with Sons of Apollo. Go check them out if they're in your town. Great music. Want to say a big thanks to everybody out there for making it a very special week. Don't forget, we have live programming this weekend. Saturday night, Joe Roop, Spaced Out Saturdays. And on Sunday, the debut of the talented Tessa Nicole Thomas. She's going mile high with you from Colorado, so make sure you give her some love and support on Sunday. Both shows start at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I will also, probably on Sunday, chime in the chat rooms if you want to chat with me as well. I want to say a big thank you to everybody listening at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. And a huge shout out for a great week For everybody on Periscope, thank you for chatting. The numbers keep growing there. Everybody on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio in Spreaker, and the Veterans Club, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thanks for sharing the shows, having some fun with us this week. Hope we did you proud. We're going to do it all again when I am back on Monday. Joseph Burks will be back. We're talking more UFOs starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Keep hanging out with us. Keep us growing. Keep getting bigger and better, sharing it with your friends, because together, my friends, we own the night. Talk to you on Monday. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a great weekend, everyone. Tune in for Joe and Tessa on the weekend. Good night.
Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching.